Brian Howell here today to speak with you this afternoon. So I don't know if anyone's here from the values.His side, but I would like to acknowledge their support for this event this afternoon. I first came across Brian Howell's work in a series that he did on minor league wrestling while researching for my internship show this fall. And I was really struck with the work, and I immediately went out and got the book that work was from. And then in December, I emailed him and to see if I could see more of his work, and he called me like within a few hours, so that was a pretty good sign. And that was the beginning of some great conversations we've had about making art after school, about photography, about this and that. And so it's really, so I'm really glad to bring him here today. Brian studied film and photography at Ryerson Polytechnical University, and upon graduation, he was invited to participate in the Eddie Adams workshop in New York and then after that time, he continued in photojournalism, working for a number of publications and exhibiting nationally and internationally. In 2001, Brian Howell received a grant from CETA to travel to India to photograph Jean Bouchin in her clinic there. And One Ring Circus, the book that I mentioned earlier, is actually at the front desk. It was a book on minor league wrestling in BC, was published in 2002. And currently, Brian Howell resides in Vancouver, BC. So before I hand the floor over to him, I'd like to take this opportunity to invite you guys to all come out tomorrow afternoon, from 5 to 7, to come to the opening of Celebrity Myth, photographs by Brian Howell and Neil Rupp. And that'll be opening tomorrow. So I hope to see you guys all there. Thanks.
Thanks, Siobhan. Thank you all for coming, and thanks to the Owens, Lucy, and Roxy for their help in preparing the exhibition. Okay, I'm going to get right into it. I've got some pictures to show. We've got about just under an hour here, so why don't we, is that machine on? We'll start with, nobody wants to look at a blue screen. Okay. What I'd like to do today is talk about sort of my journey in photography this far, because my work has changed in the last sort of 10 years. It's kind of evolved, and I think there are a few things responsible for that that change. Just the way what I call traditional photojournalism is being seen and being published. I mean, there are fewer outlets for the work, and my work just sort of evolved naturally from what I call a very traditional kind of Leica photography. With work, I was influenced mainly from people who were working in the 40s and 50s in Life magazine, and I started doing this kind of work mainly at school, and then moved on to working in media. I actually work as a press photographer even today. And these larger projects are things that I fund on my own, typically. And then we'll submit to magazines or have shows or books or whatever. All three if the gods are shining. So there's a couple of pictures here from India, and then I'll get into the wrestling work and then the celebrity work. So this is Jean Buchan. She's 92 years old when I took this picture with one leg, and ran a clinic for women in rural northern India. And I met her in New Westminster, BC. I was assigned to go take a picture, and the assignment said, Canada's Mother Teresa. So I went down and met this little old Scottish lady. And she said, you should come to India with me. And I said, yeah, you're right, I probably should. So a year later, we made it happen. And then she was kind of getting a little senile, and I showed up. I traveled all the way to this rural community. It took me, I think, 3 days to get there, just traveling time. And then she said, "Who the hell are you?" So, remember, came to take your picture from Canada. And she soon remembered, and we had a good time. So these are some of the images from the community. I focused mainly on her and her clinic, but also she provided a great sort of passport into the community, and soon I was able to just shoot freely, walk around. So, you know, people would come out in the street and just pull you into their house and say, "Take a picture of my family." So, this picture came about. They were kind of arranging themselves into a family portrait, and as they were moving, I took the shot. And it worked out well in the piece, because the piece, in the end, there were 35 images, and it was focusing on women in this region. So the woman at the back stands out pretty nicely with the light. By the way, feel free to interrupt as I'm going, like ask questions. I like to keep this as informal as possible. So if you have any questions. So this was the way I was working. I was working with a Leica camera, shooting everything available light, and really approaching it as a journalist, just trying to tell a story, but also obviously looking for, little poetic moments and thinking of exhibiting the work as well. This is the Muslim school. It was great shooting there, unlike other places I've worked in, particularly in Canada. The people were very open to being photographed, and in fact, at certain times you'd be followed by 20 to 30 people at a time who all wanted their picture taken. And this was the nurse, as I call her, Jean. This was her assistant, who had been her assistant for 30 years. So these kids who would follow me in large groups, I just started taking portraits of them in open shade, and I ended up with a little sub-series of these portraits of the kids who were wonderful. I mean, at first they turned out to be kind of pesty, but in the end, once I stopped and started talking to them and that, it got better, and they were pretty happy once I would take their picture, although they wanted it somehow to come out of the camera magically at that time. So, and as I spent more and more time there, I could gain a lot more access to things, and I was actually invited to this cremation ceremony on the riverbank, which was an amazing thing to take part in. So I think this is the last one that we're going to get into. So it's kind of a shifting of gears here now. Does anyone have any questions about this work before we go on to the wrestling work, or yeah?
I'm just curious how much language
There was a language barrier. I mean, nobody spoke English, and I would pull for the Hindi guidebook, and I knew how to say water and vegetarian. That's which is very important, even though I'm not a vegetarian, but there I was, because you don't want to be eating meat. So those are the two first words. But in terms of actually working, people, I don't think it matters where you go. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later. Where you go or who you're working with, whether you're in India or Las Vegas, I think there isn't a whole lot that separates people. And these people were quite forthcoming. They knew what I was doing by taking pictures, and a lot of hand gesturing. And I also had a guide, a young fella who spoke pretty good English, and he would come along and he would sort of ask people, because you like to, I don't like to sort of take people's pictures without them necessarily, not knowing that I'm shooting, depending on the situation. So I'd always get him to sort of ask, is it okay if we, do a picture, and he would control the crowds too. So we'll get right into the wrestling then. So this is from my book, One Ring Circus, and it started off as a small project. Again, I was working for a community newspaper, and I'd heard about this wrestling where the guys would, they would actually wrestle right out onto the street into traffic, and the cops would come, and I thought I got to check this out. So I went down there with my trusty Leica, and the rooms are really, really dimly lit rooms, and there was a lot of action, and I'm not the type of person that likes to push film. So after a couple of unsuccessful nights, I started shooting with a Hasselblad and just a big flash, like basically a wedding photographer setup, I think. And it started to produce some pretty successful images, and I started to look a little bit differently. Instead of looking for moments, I started concentrating on just sort of looking at the people in a more sort of iconic fashion. So this would typically take place in Legion halls, and I'm sure there's a group of wrestlers around New Brunswick that do this kind of thing. They tend to travel in little vans, and it's kind of a circus. Yeah, I saw that guy go right through the ring once. He was a big guy, but quite athletic. So I was shooting the action and the fans. These are the number 1 and number 2 fans, Kathy and Linda. They've been going to wrestling for 15 years, each of them. And they yell and scream and bring signs, and signs like, "I want your hotel room key," to these wrestlers who make $5 a night and don't have a hotel room key, but yeah. So people have criticized this picture. It's obviously shot from a low angle, and I've been criticized for what I was said. Someone called it a fattest picture. And it's a low angle, and I honestly, at the time I shot it, I wasn't really looking at their body types at all. I just knew that they were the 1 and 2 fans, and I was at the edge of the ring, and it was kind of a sneak shot from low angle. So, but they loved the picture. It was in the book, and they loved it. So. What was amazing, you talk about people. This guy had several concussions, and the blood is real. And as a photographer, you go into a situation like this, and you can't help but have your mind blown that people would do this, probably with the same passion that we all like to make art. This is their art. They love what they do, but an incredible physical and emotional sacrifice. I was actually afraid to photograph this guy. I took two frames, and Dr. Luther. And this is Bam Bam Bambi. And, she was sort of the mother type. She used to make uniforms for the guys and pack lunches, and I like this picture for this project because these people who are doing this are really emulating what they see on TV from the WWE, which used to be the WWF, and all of them had aspirations of making it to the big leagues, and so obviously, as an image maker, you see the American flag, and in a small Canadian gymnasium was quite striking from across the floor. And she was actually being photographed by another photographer at the time. She had brought her own backdrop, a piece of silk. So, teenage boys acting out. The thing with wrestling too is a lot of people say it's fake, but on another hand, it's incredibly real because there is no pretense. It's all what it is, and it's one of the most real things you could possibly actually go and see, apart from the storylines and that. But the way that the fans react and the way that the wrestlers act, there's nothing sort of censored about it. It's very politically incorrect stuff. And this work, I mean, you'll see in the celebrity work, is this what started happening here is I started looking at how people would transform from, this guy, he's just a regular guy, and all of a sudden he would put his mask on, and he would stay in character for the whole night. In fact, he would drive away from the shows with his mask on because he didn't want anyone to recognize him. And this guy was this star, Scotty Mack. Scotty was he could go to a small town. It's interesting too, small town where they're not as bombarded with events. It's like a city like Vancouver. There's a number of things you can do in an evening. The small towns would come out in droves to watch these guys, and there would literally be lineups to get an autograph from Scotty. And he was, he worked at a pizza restaurant by day, but he was a superstar wrestler in the eyes of his fans by night. And they have groupies. It's a lucky shot. After some, lots and lots of time spent around shooting it, I could kind of anticipate where the wrestlers would go and what they were going to do next. So I positioned myself well for this one, and got lucky. It was sharp. So he's actually diving. There's a guy that you can't see in the foreground, obviously. He's going to land on him. So. And there's nothing fake about this picture. So I actually was asked recently how I photoshopped it so well. And I said, well, yeah. Behind the scenes, it took a long time to get access behind the scenes because it's, I tell people it's sort of like a magician showing you how they do their tricks, because these guys are all supposed to hate one another. And so eventually they let me come into their dressing room, and it was a thrill actually to gain that access. Yeah. Gorgeous Michelle Starr and Loverboy Johnny Canuck, a tag team. And the uncensored response. Now, this is where it gets disturbing. I mean, I wrote about this in the book, and the idea of this guy actually sitting down to pen this thing out was pretty strange, and I don't necessarily have an explanation for it, but as a photographer, when you see something like this, again, I was saying like earlier, it kind of just blows your mind that someone would actually go out in public and do this. And in the context of a wrestling show, it's accepted. Whereas if you did this out in the street, it most likely wouldn't be. Any comments on this picture? Anybody? Anyone have anything to offer on this one?
Did he react after the fact, or know that you took the picture?
He knew I took the picture, yeah.
And how did he feel about it, do you think?
Not even, no, nothing. Again, there's a huge flash going off in his face, right? I believe this might be the oh no, there might be one more. This guy was a really famous wrestler. I don't know if any of you follow wrestling. His name is the Honky Tonk Man. And the Honky Tonk Man apparently, and I was never a wrestling fan until I started doing this project. And the Honky Tonk Man apparently used to fill stadiums with Hulk Hogan. I mean, these people that we hear their names through various channels. Anyway, this was his gig. You know, he would come up to Canada and he would wrestle for, I think they'd pay him a little bit more than they paid the regular guys, but he was a big draw, big star. This is beautiful Bruce. And this is the same woman that was in the picture of the two of them. And at the end of the night, she would give all the wrestlers a paper-wrapped carnation, which is what's in those bags. So this is a very sad picture for me. Generally, you know, she was always up the front of the arena, and then this night she was at the back, and she was kind of by herself, and she was very involved emotionally in wrestling, and I think what had happened this night is someone had pissed her off because she would get to the point where she'd be yelling at the wrestlers and she'd walk away and stuff. And so I think this particular night she went to the back of the hall and just kind of sat there. We're going to go into the celebrity stuff. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this stuff as we're going?
Over how long a period of time is this project?
Off and on, 3 years. What happened was I shot some initial pictures, which I published in a couple of places, and then I had a little show of 15 images, and then Arsenal Press contacted me and asked me if I'd be interested in doing a book, and I just come back from India. I said, "Oh, on the India stuff, sure." And they said, "No, on the wrestling." And I said, "Well, geez, I don't even know if these people are still at it." Excuse me. So I had to sort of go reintroduce myself after kind of a year and a half away from them. I kind of let the project, you know, I felt that I had done it as much as I wanted to do with it. But I had always kind of had a hankering to go back because it was such a rich thing to shoot. So I actually, it worked out really well when the book deal came up. It enabled me and forced me to go back to the subject matter that I had really enjoyed shooting. So, and it, you know, developed the project to some 100 pictures in the final edit for the book. So it was really nice to revisit, and sometimes I still think I'd like to go back and shoot some more because it's one of those situations that just offers up richness every time you go in terms of taking pictures. There's so much to shoot. Okay, any others?
How many places did you go to?
We traveled around BC a little bit. A lot of the pictures were shot at this, what was called the Eagles Hall. You know, the Eagles groups, like the Elks groups, and that they had a hall. And it was a beautiful old theater, and it was just such an amazing venue. But they lost their rights to play there, so they traveled around a bit. I went over to Vancouver Island with them and into the interior of the province a little bit, and just around suburban Vancouver. They would, you know, go 20 miles outside of the city, 50 miles outside of the city, and that kind of thing. So they weren't traveling too far. They really weren't drawing huge crowds. You know, there wouldn't be, some nights there would be as many people as there are in this room right now, which is a huge crowd in here. I'm terrified being here, but, you know. But yeah, if there was a ring, you know. So, okay, well, we'll move on to the next group here. So, again, a project that grew out of working for a small paper. I was assigned to shoot an Elvis Elvis Mania or something it was called. And I woke up really early on a Sunday morning because I heard that there was a guy doing a gospel Elvis show. So I thought, well, this could be interesting. And I went out and I was telling someone this story this morning. I being a press photographer, I've shot a lot of rock concerts and stuff, and I went to this, and this is the only time I've ever been kicked in the back of the leg and told to sit down, even though I was crouching and trying to be respectful to the audience. And I was amazed that the crowd was so into it, you know. And then let's see, I think there's another. This is another Elvis I shot in Vegas, and the thing with the impersonator thing, when I first started it, I didn't know that it was as broad as it was. I mean, it tends to be associated exclusively with Elvis Presley, but it's not. In fact, there are celebrity impersonators for almost every popular celebrity that's out there. So again, you know, you think again, a lot of the acts will pay tribute to these older sort of dead celebrities. This is Marilyn Monroe. But I started to meet a broader spectrum of people. Yeah. This interesting story around this guy. He actually died, the poor fellow, and just before all the shit hit the fan with Michael Jackson, he died, and I thought it was quite peculiar because I don't know what he would have done after Michael's kind of change of heart or whatever you want to call it. I don't know what change of direction in his life. So this was shot in Vegas. So there were two sort of degrees of impersonators. There are people who naturally look like someone. And then there are people like the Michael Jackson who may look a little bit like someone but have to kind of do it up with makeup. This guy was pretty authentic. Yeah, this is Connie Francis holding the picture of the real Connie Francis. And apart from the hairdo, she doesn't really look like her. Which is, you know, it's okay. I mean, in this project, I almost prefer it more when the people don't look as much like the person they're impersonating. This is David Lee Roth. I used to be a big Van Halen fan when I was a kid, so this was quite a thrill. So what happens? I mean, you're in Las Vegas and people walk up and they're taking, you know, double takes at these people, and they come up and they get autographs, and the impersonators talk to them in character. So this guy's going, "How you doing, baby? It's great to meet you," you know, and she's having this experience, you know, and he's having this experience, and it's these people draw a crowd. I mean, walking down this strip in Las Vegas with a group of impersonators is an amazing experience because people just fly up and they all want to have their photograph taken with them. This is Johnny Cash. Used to be an Elvis impersonator. Got old and thought, hey. Yeah. Marilyn getting a hand down the stairs. So they do these little talent shows and stuff. They perform. And for money, they get judged and stuff. Stevie Wonder, Anna Nicole Smith, and Dean Martin. So this was on the bus. Every year at the convention, we have a barbecue out at this ranch, and so you step onto the bus and you just see all these faces, and it's like, who do I want to sit next to? So. Everybody's favorite. Photographing this guy, as a photographer, it's you're looking at something, and you're it's like, hey, this I'm having an experience of what it might be like to photograph George Bush by photographing this guy, and it's completely strange. And what I strive to do is these impersonators will all strike a pose when you go to take their picture. And this is I think an important lesson in portraiture is when you have to kind of know where you're going with a portrait. You can't just aim the camera at someone. And what I got to in this and also in the wrestling is I would say to people, well, okay, that's fine. You want to do the scary pose as a wrestler, but I kind of want to see you in that costume. And so let yourself come through, and that's what I'd kind of say to these people. And at the same time, trying to get a sense of how I feel about the character, how that character has affected me through popular culture, and what I think of that person. So obviously, photographing George Bush was really kind of crazy for me. I was excited, I was like, please be in focus, because for me, it was this opportunity to make a comment on a couple of things, on how I feel about George Bush, as well as the whole looking at celebrity and looking at this guy who's an alarm installer in Idaho. Pretty cool having the president come to install your alarm, I guess. If you're into that kind of thing, you'd probably feel pretty safe. Or maybe not, I don't know. This is another George Bush. They don't like each other. They fight over gigs, right? And the third George Bush. Seven-foot Cher. Cyndi Lauper. It's interesting the type of characters that people will want to impersonate. And what's really scary is that there are people who impersonate people who are in their prime. And for instance, there's a Whitney Houston impersonator who looked like Whitney Houston did when she was young, and her career shot up. And if you look at Whitney Houston now, this woman, the impersonator, is more Whitney Houston than Whitney Houston is, which is also kind of strange. And we as the culture look at this, and we look at someone like Whitney Houston maybe, and we as we watch her fall, we still remember her for a certain reason, even if we don't buy the music, even if we don't like the music. I don't like the music. I've never bought the music, but I know everything about her. I know who she is. I know that she's having problems with her husband. I know that she's had a baby. I know that she's used crack. I know that she just performed at the Olympics. And all of this I find in transit. I don't look for this stuff. It just comes at me. We know more about celebrities than we do about some of our own family members. And it's true. If your mom's having a bad day and she doesn't live in your house, you necessarily don't know that. But you turn on the TV and Brad and Angelina are pregnant and they're adopting another kid, and Jen's pissed off, and you all laugh because you all know that exists and it's true, and you probably don't even look for it. Most people at art institutions and that say they don't watch television. I used to say that, and I don't watch a lot of television, but it's unavoidable. On the way here, I was actually going to do this, and I didn't pull it off. I thought about shooting a bunch of pictures with my digital camera of all of the celebrity invasion that I saw on the way, and this is sort of what Neil's dealing with in his work. On the way flying here from Vancouver, you go to the airport, you walk in a magazine store. What do you see? A wall of familiar faces. You get on the plane and they have little TVs. And you can watch the entertainment shows because there are only 6 channels. And one of those channels is an entertainment show. It's everywhere. You get into the hotel room, you turn on the TV, and boom, it's there. So it's kind of inescapable, and for me, fascinating that people would actually be able to make a living impersonating someone else. One of the key speakers at the convention is a plastic surgeon. Again, just sort of the fan interest in Elvis. The man looks nothing like Elvis. I mean, it's incredible. They're a couple. They're actually married and they live in Calgary. Yeah, it's interesting. Rodney Dangerfield. Prince. This guy was incredible, actually. His partner was this Dutchman who just, I think he thought he was dating Prince, and he would carry his guitar around for him, and sweet, it was very sweet. Oh, okay, I jumped. Any questions, comments? Okay. Okay, I just thought I would show some of some work that I just went on a road trip through the States at the time when gas was, fuel is a big issue, and it got me thinking about the American road trip and if that's going to change. And I think this is kind of a sketch to what might evolve into a bigger project. So there's Lincoln out in the middle of a golf course. And this is new work. I mean, I've just recently started shooting color with the square. Sharp or not. Yeah, this project was a little different. I mean, it was a little more kind of looking at the landscape more than looking at people. And we went to this is the Grand Coulee Dam in Washington State, and there was no one there except for this Korean family sitting on a little patch of concrete, with this potentially raging river behind them. I thought it was kind of neat. This is the Mall of America shop parking lot. A couple of pictures of a family in a thrift store. A rest stop. I didn't have the right lens to shoot Mount Rushmore, so I went to go to the bathroom and I thought, well, here's my shot. And then these are the small town in Montana. These are the guys that have gone off to war in this abandoned building's window. And I think, oh, that's it. Okay. Yeah, that's it. We're back at, I don't know why we're back at Michael Jackson, but I guess I can just leave that there. So, any comments, questions? Anybody? Come on. No, I don't really shoot 35 at all. I bring it with me when I go traveling, like a little trip or something, but I really don't work with it anymore. And at the outset, I really wanted to do these photo stories of issues that I believed in. I mean, I didn't show a lot of my earlier work, but I'd done a lot of the, I worked with, we have a big drug problem in Vancouver. I did work with that at homeless. I did a photo essay on a deaf blind man. And a lot of this work is not publishable. I think I was telling Siobhan earlier that, I did the India work, and it was a nice piece of work in its entirety, and the response from the wrestling work was overwhelmingly much more, I guess, positive and regular. I mean, it was just the work is still. I just exhibited the wrestling work in Italy, and I shot it years ago. It's I'm almost bored of it, but it has this quality that kind of resonates a little more. And I don't know if people are as apt to publish photojournalism the way it used to be published. Every photographer will complain about that, but I think in my case it really became a reality, and I saw people starting to change their style. I saw people starting to shoot in more of a kind of an editorial kind of way. Neil and I were talking earlier about Mary Ellen Mark's work and how she kind of went from shooting kind of available light work to more of a produced large format work. I mean, there's a sense that you want to, I think, make something that has quality because you have to keep your options open. It's not good enough to just do a nice piece of photojournalism for a magazine that doesn't even exist, and if it did, may not publish it anyway. So you kind of want to shoot, in my mind, with a larger negative and look at having shows. And it's no accident that almost every photographer on the planet now has a book, because people have kind of, I think, gotten to the point where they have to, if they want to get something across, they have to take care of it themselves, because the magazines just don't have the real estate. So it's a long answer to a question about the Leica, but I love the Leica. I love what it's all about, and I say to my wife, I'll only go back to that kind of photography if I find an issue that really has to be, in my mind, has to be put forward. And I have an intern working with me right now who's on a waiting list to go to Afghanistan. There are 30 people ahead of him, and I said, well, why the hell do you want to go? And this is what happens in photojournalism. They go, well, I got to go, get my stuff, make my mark, and, then the magazine that doesn't exist will hire me, So unless there's a really compelling story that I think needs to be told, I don't think I would go back to that kind of work. Whereas I think that there's great opportunity to make statements with what I'm doing in popular culture and looking at looking kind of inside, looking at our culture and almost kind of laughing at it in a way, and looking at, not necessarily looking overseas, but kind of, looking at North America and how we live, and you know, there's a tendency, I think, for people to want to go overseas. And I honestly, like I said earlier, I don't think people are that different. And I think you can find great stories all around you. So, but are they important enough to sink your teeth into? No. That sounds harsh, but I think there are a lot of photo ops. I mean, we all saw Mr. Harper on the plane. He's looking kind of fat these days. He's eating well, but you know, those are all carefully staged and carefully managed, and we're not getting. I mean, you know, it'd be a very interesting comparison to look at the images that come out of Iraq versus the images that came out of Vietnam. There is no access. There isn't the same kind of access, and we live in the photo op world, you know. So you can't get backstage at an event, say a concert or something. They'll present the person for 5 minutes, get your picture, and 20,000 photographers get the same picture, and the person walks away. And maybe that's why I evolved into this type of photography, because maybe there weren't as many moments, you know, natural moments that I could find with my Leica of something fantastic happening out in the street. So I think the business of it, I mean, I do work for the Globe and Mail, and I work for a community newspaper. I think the community newspaper is as real as it gets. And I'm proud to say that I work for a community newspaper. And it's not, you know, maybe as glamorous as working for the Globe, but the work that I do at the community newspaper, I think has a lot more impact than what I do at the Globe and Mail. The Globe and Mail a lot of it is very, unless it's spot news, a lot of it is very carefully set up. Meet this person at 3, they'll be waiting for you in front of this building, and make sure you get the sign in the background. It's got to be sharp. Shoot it color with a digital camera and get it to us by 3. So that's, to me, where photojournalism is at. And so, photographers pull their teeth out. I think, you know, working with, I do work for Maclean's too. Same thing. Go shoot this guy in his manager's office. Okay, well, he's a musician though. Well, yeah, I know, but you know, just take him in the hallway or something. Actually, this is a real story. I was photographing Michael Bublé. I don't know if you guys know, he's a singer. And that was the case. I photographed him in his manager's office, but found out that day he had a very hectic day planned through talking to him, and he was going to be going all over Vancouver in this back of this limo. And I thought, wow, that's a great picture. I'd rather be photographing this guy. And again, he's a celebrity, ironically. But I would rather be shooting him, you know, as he goes and does his thing naturally than saying, well, the background in the hallway there might work. I think we could try that. And what happens is you start to second guess yourself, and you're trying to shoot for an art director or an editor before you are trying to make a good picture for yourself and even for the person, because the shot is not necessarily going to relate to them either. You're just trying to, you know, keep it sharp and keep it lit. So it's really changed. I'm sad to say. I was talking again with Neil this morning, and I never thought that I would not print with fiber-based paper. I never thought that I would shoot a digital camera and all these things, and it has changed. But we can still shoot, and we can still work the other way too. And it's just a matter of finding places like this gallery for it to fit into. So, yeah. I do. I mean, I think that you can produce. I mean, for me personally, I can produce a lot more work using an Epson printer than I could in the darkroom. That's just for me. I mean, that coming from a discipline of learning how to print traditionally and studying printing and knowing what a print should look like, hopefully. So you can use the technology to your advantage. I mean, the cameras just keep getting better. The quality keeps getting better. You can actually, I think, become a better photographer with a digital camera, because you have it, you know, as we all know, you can look at it right away. It's not, the mystery is gone. I had another student who worked with me. He said he didn't know how to use his flash off camera, yet he had never shot with a film camera. And I said, well, you just hold it off camera and you look. You take your shot and you look and you go, did I get it right? And if you didn't, I said, I sound like an old man. I'm saying, you know, in my day, we shot a roll of slide film and we wrote down every exposure to test our flash and to see if it would work. So things have gotten, I think, easier. But, you know, it's also, I'm not talking too much about the art world because I don't have a whole lot of experience in the art world, but in the journalism, media world, there's a lot more people shooting. So you really have to make a statement for yourself as a photographer, and I think that that's why we're seeing a lot more large format, because, you know, you look at it from their point of view and it's kind of like, well, anyone can take a picture with a digital camera. You should see what my aunt did last week, or, you know. So I think photographers and more people I know are shooting large formats. They're going to do portraits with 4x5s. I bought a speed graphic. You know, I do portraits with a speed graphic sometimes for magazines. Why? Because I want the person to stop. I don't want them to think I'm just coming in there going, hi, how you doing? Click, click, bye, thanks, see you, gotta go. It's more like, I'm gonna take this black blanket and I'm gonna put it over my head and disappear for a sec. And you watch the look on people's faces when you do that. And you look at the pictures. And the pictures all of a sudden start to have that quality that I love in a picture, where the person is engaged. And you can, you know, the detail and everything's great, but it's slowing down, taking the time to do it. And I think that's one thing that technology is moving in an opposite direction. It's speeding everything up, you know, and people want pictures, you know, real fast now. Like in the news business, they expect you to turn things around right away. And there's no, you know, find a hot spot, you know, use your laptop quick, you know. And I once saw a photographer running across the street with this. I was driving to the federal election, actually. Photographer for the daily newspaper. I was driving to this event and I saw this glow going across the street. What the hell is that, right? And my friend Les with his laptop looking for a signal. You know, just he had to get his pictures in for deadlines. So that's kind of the reality. But also, I mean, it beats having to drive that film in and get it processed. So in that, you know, in that area, in journalism, in newspaper journalism especially, it's a great tool. I don't know. I think there's still a lot of possibility, and I just think you have to really define what you do and be clever and be a little more, be a photographer. You know, because there are a lot of people out there that are taking pictures, and if you want to be relevant in the art world or relevant in the media world, you need to somehow be able to offer something, a style or an interesting take on things. So. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I find it. I find everyone, and this is the key. And you can talk about all this other stuff as much as you want, but the key is this is about experience. And for me, photographing people, human experience. And when you go and you have these experiences with people, it's profound, I think. You know, whether it's, and you get surprised all the time. And just at the community newspaper, I went to photograph a woman who was an elderly lady who was getting a wheelchair delivered to her house. So I had to go take a picture. And she'd worked as a journalist for 60 years. And I stayed for 3 hours, had a great conversation with her. So that to me is, you know, the best part of doing this kind of work. And just things. I mean, I get a call every Christmas from the mirror ball man, who is a guy I met. He's a drifter guy who makes mirror balls for a living. He goes into motels and he cuts the mirrors and he makes disco balls and sells them for $10. And phones me every Christmas, though. I took pictures of him. And you make these relationships with people, and it's to me, it's great. And that's what it's all about. Even, you know, and people, like my work, people might look at it as, some people described it as kind of freakish. And, you know, but these people to me are wearing a mask. I'm not trying to degrade them in any way. They're all good people. They're all, and they're not any different than anyone else. So, except for the George Bush guy. No. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. Anyone else? I think we're good.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you guys for coming out, and thank you, Brian, for that talk. That was great.
Thanks.
We'll be
Thanks for
here
having me.
for another day, so if you have any questions and you didn't ask them now, just go up and ask them later on if you see them down.
Yeah. Thanks very much, you guys.